Oh, to be a fly on the wall for this recording session. We opened this week with Shion outright stating something rather blasphemous and hosting a show for all of her fellow VTubers.
略して L1 グランプリの司会進行兼ツッコミを担当するシオンママです。
Yeah, we get it. Every anime needs a tournament arc and all that. Actually, it was a competition where the VTubers would break off into pairs to do some improvised sketch comedy a la Whose Line Is It Anyway? Though this show at least had an actual cash prize of 200k yen, so at least it wasn't just to entertain Drew Carey or something. The first pair was Sei and Aoyuki, aka the Dirty Uncle duo. Their improv scenario turned out to be a convenience store. Could you also maybe do a Ramble parody where several of the VAs kind of take it way too seriously?
何も終わっちゃいない！何も終わっちゃいないんだ！あんたに頼まれて必死で戦ったが勝てなかった！
Chill, Hanamori, chill. Well, not at all surprisingly for these two, they just snuck in every dirty dad joke under the sun, including having the clerk say offer some Marvel films of the Prano parody variety. Do you have Ironheart by any chance? No, I'm not talking about Riri Williams, I'm talking about this, which actually came out first. Yeah, seriously, look it up. Marvel is run by a bunch of idiot clowns. Honestly, I think everyone should just be glad that this was all virtual and they didn't have actual props or else we'd all be in trouble. But yeah, Sei definitely stole this one just by having Yu Kobayashi go full artist mode and just let all of her depravities leak into her performance. Like seriously, I think even Katsuragi would say to hold it back a little. The next pair was the supposed power duel of Hikari and Alice, though the latter was more using her partner to get into Aoyuki's pants. Yeah, I would argue a true loli is below 4.5, and she is just above that, unfortunately. Anyway, they got a hero and demon lord scenario, and for the most part, aside from a few flubs, they just kind of played out a straightforward Dragon Quest final boss scene. As such, it didn't really lead to too much actual comedy until Hikari told the backstory of her Excalibur and how she slayed her own princess to get it. So wait, in this timeline, mysterious Ranmaru X was the one who defeated Arturia? Man, I feel bad for Mordred. However, the comedy was still subpar, so they just moved on to the last pair of Nekoba and Kairu. They called themselves the reversal pair in the sense that Nekoba had crap taste that would be the reverse of the average person, while Kairu believed that she was Benjamin Button and that she aged in reverse.
That makes sense to me.
Their scenario was an apology press conference, which, yeah, I was really hoping they'd just do a parody of Nonomura. I mean, I know they've lampooned this to death in Japan, but come on, if you've ever seen the original footage, you'd want to see as many parodies of this as possible. However, I guess since they were VTubers, and one of them was a furry, they decided to do something more along the lines of Korone's fake apology for being an evil god. Yeah, look it up for yourself, it's actually really funny stuff. Anyway, to Nekoma's credit, she did come up with a pretty believable crime that Kairu would absolutely commit, complete hilariously enough with CG recreations that you would see on the Japanese news channels. Hell, the fact that Kairu was able to come up with a whole speech explaining and quote-unquote justifying her actions suggested that sneaking onto a kids show might have been in the back of her very deviant mind. All of this combined actually made their bit arguably the funniest, especially once Kairu pulled a turnabout and turned the questions onto Nekoma. Really, I think this pair should have won the contest, but I guess they were disqualified when Kairu almost said the name of a game whose copyright holders they didn't want to have to deal with. The game she was likely referring to was Major Wii Perfect Closer, which is considered to be one of the worst games for that system due to its numerous glitches, and it was created by Takara Tomy. Please don't screw up the Magical Girl show. Please don't screw up the Magical Girl show. But yeah, as a result, I think the Dirty Uncle pair won mostly by default. However, they were at least good winners and invited everyone out for sushi afterwards. And all in all, just a really fun first half of the episode, again mostly made by the hilarious performances of the VAs involved. The second half of the episode was a little more character-focused and featured Aoyuki doing a collab with Eri. The latter was doing it as a punishment game for not being able to answer all of the questions for an animal trivia stream. Granted, the one question she couldn't answer was kind of dirty when it was asking her weight, as humans are technically animals, but also, shouldn't the questions be more broad trivia rather than just focusing on a singular mammal? Well, whatever, she had already been a defeat, and thus her punishment was to play a horror game that Aoyuki chose, which was, oh god, Awa Oni. Can you tell the show is inundated in YouTube meme culture? For those not in the know, Awa Oni is by far one of the most successful Japanese indie horror games made with the freeware software RPG Maker. It gained massive notoriety through many Let's Plays, albeit long before the VTuber boom. Personally, I saw it mostly through Markiplier, though I did revisit it later with Subaru's playthrough of it. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between those two. As a result, it managed to break into the mainstream with several big adaptations and ports, with the latest being as recent as less than 2 months ago, with ports for both the stream and Nintendo Switch. Granted, its other adaptations are of questionable quality, but more on that later. Anyway, I was of course one of those VTubers who really couldn't handle horror games. Thus she unwisely brought in Aoyuki on the belief that her antics would make the horror game a little more bearable, not realizing that she would just add to the stalker count along with the Oni. And since the show likely got full permission from the original creators, they were able to include actual gameplay footage, much like what they did with Getting Over It, to really add to the authenticity, even though they more likely just got some intern to record some gameplay footage according to their script. Regardless, Erai's playthrough went about as well as you'd expect until the first encounter with the titular monster that showed a slightly different side to the VTuber. Luca, put the ranger key down. You don't have to get so antsy. Yeah, while this was mostly just a fun little comedic episode, this was the one bit of significant character building that first left Aoyuki shocked with this face before she welcomed Erai to their two-faced ranks with her Slenderman arms. Though, unlike Aoyuki, Erai really didn't want a secondary persona, which in her case was her embracing her love for Yakuza films. However, as her senpai put it best, VTubers are all about having as many sides to their online persona as possible. Honestly, a good moment to develop Erai a little more, but this one was still mostly a comedy episode where they made a ton of dirty jokes while doing Awa Oni parodies that really highlight what it's like to play this game. Though again, I think Mark still has them all beat.
Ah! No! He's blonde! He's blonde!
Eventually, AI did beat the game in good time, all things considered. However, beforehand, Aoyuki did her own little jump scare that ended up creating a meme through her scream. Oh, come on. Even that's too old of a meme for me. The ending theme, of course, was done by AI, who did, appropriately enough, a very comforting tune all about nature, but hell, screw that noise, as I think there's only one song to truly close out an episode like this. This one was just a laugh riot that also cleverly implemented one of the most popular Let's Plays from back in my day at least. The first half was hilarious, especially if you're into improv comedy like me. Meanwhile, the second half was the right kind of usage of nostalgia for those who have watched Let's Plays for years. Unironically, I would even say this is one of the best adaptations of Awa Oni, albeit there's just not that much competition to speak of. Improv sketch comedy, by its very definition, is not something you can recreate with at least a mostly scripted show. That said, I do say mostly because while the VTubers' lines were planned out, their deliveries were definitely more credited to the VAs like Yu Kobayashi and Ai Kayano, just hamming it up to no end. Performances like theirs make things feel a little more authentic, while of course just adding to the comedy. Add on a few little parodies here and there, and you end up with a pretty funny first half. However, the full-on parody and main event of this episode was definitely the Awa Oni collab that I would outright say is the best adaptation of that game so far. Personally, I found the movies to be pretty boring, and while the 2016 short anime was a bit of a guilty pleasure, I'll also admit it was kind of stupid. And while the show was also a little more comedy focused, they clearly tried to capture the spirit of what it's like to play this game, which is also kind of the whole point of VTubers. On that note, it It also resulted in some much needed character development for AI, who showed off her inner edgy badass, which, like with Aoyuki and Shua, was a really fun little contrast of personas. And overall, that is what this episode was. Just a lot of fun, with a legit sense that these are friends trying to pull off improv together, as well as trying to scare each other. And if that doesn't sound like a fun Saturday night to you, then maybe you should try it after a few cold ones.
すべて私がいただこう。全部だ。
And who's that? Oh, it's Mr. MVP! Sim!
これだけは理解できる。かわいい。
This guy must be one of Lenscrafter's best customers.
白夜さん。
ミラさん
白夜さん。
ミラさん
Yeah, could you guys finish this up before next Christmas?
ちゃんのためにアップルパイ作ってきたよ
Still better than most Precure Christmas specials. I mean, at least this ship is a little less questionable than others. But yeah, like many Christmas specials, not much to complain about. It's just good wholesome stuff that reminds you about the holidays that are still 3 months away, but it's the thought that counts. Byakuya and Mira continue to have a sweet, yet also surprisingly healthy relationship, all things considered, as the former did try to become a little more independent after all the simping Mira has done, which, yeah, he really needs to chill out on at this point. Still, they are a nice couple, and calling each other by their first names was cute. I do wish we could have seen more of the supporting cast, especially with the other general's Christmas party, but can't expect too much from a 15-minute anime. But yeah, overall, an okay Christmas episode that I will probably rewatch in December, as they at least depicted some of the most significant parts of the holidays, including the love, the kindness, and the getting wastedness. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out some of our other videos on this channel, as we have kind of changed things up recently. We started reviewing this season's new comic writer, Gav, which does mean we'll have to at least temporarily downgrade Boom Booger to short reviews. Nothing against the show itself, as it is actually starting to get good again, but I just don't have that much time in the week. The first short review should be out later today sometime. And until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and wait, let me guess. The Awa Oni is gonna chase me off the screen, isn't it? Hey, can I at least get some bear music? Thank you.